Welcome to Straight Talk for Entrepreneurs, where we reveal what it really takes to build a successful business. Whether you are starting with an idea or growing your business, this is the show for you. My guests and I will show you how to build a strong mindset, a powerful body, a profitable business. Hi, I'm Brandon C. White, and this is Build a Business Success Secrets. I wanted to hear your thoughts on if entrepreneurship was learned or you could teach it from two of us who have been VCs, entrepreneurs, and went to business school, right? If that helped, I'm not quite sure yet. But you had something to talk about reluctant entrepreneurs, which I was interested to hear more about.
Yeah.
What is that?
So reluctant entrepreneur, I think, is a Silicon Valley phenomenon. So you know how, so you brought up business school. So I speak to a lot of, mentor a lot of young MBA grads who call and say, hey, how do I get to be CEO? And, what did you do to get there? And half the time, I think these guys aren't going to be CEOs. They're somewhat reluctant CEOs because that's what MBA school teaches you. You pay, 80 to 100 grand a year for a couple of years. And what they tell you is look up all these case studies we're going to give you are about CEOs. And yeah, you need to know how to manage a P&L. You need to be a CEO. So that's what's in your brain 24/7 for 2 years. And MBA guys, and gals, they want to come out and become CEO. So it's like, it's good in a way because it teaches you to, be thinking about your future. But that's what MBA school teaches you, to be a CEO. So Silicon Valley to me is similar. You come here and, you hear about all these fabulous SPACs and IPOs and billionaires and, young kids making millions of stock options. And you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to cash out, and all of a sudden, 10 to 15,000 shares aren't enough. You want to have 30% of the company and 20% when it goes public. And it's looking around you and seeing yourself surrounded by these people and wanting to be an entrepreneur, but you're a reluctant entrepreneur because you don't have that. And this goes back to whether you're born with it or you get trained with it. Cutting to the chase, I think there's an element of both, but the born with it wins. So you have to have that fire in your belly. You have to have the knowing how to make quick decisions based on your gut, living with the consequences. You can train some of that, but you can't train a lot of it. The instincts you can't train. So there's people that don't have it, that aren't born entrepreneurs, but they want to be entrepreneurs and they try to be an entrepreneur, but they're a reluctant entrepreneur because the whole risk reward thing is pulling at them, is trying to get them to take less risk when you have to take more managed risk as an entrepreneur. So that's what I call reluctant entrepreneur. This is something that a friend of mine, I'm an advisor to him. He kind of, I think, coined that term. So it's not my term, but I've been thinking about it over the years as I've seen more and more reluctant entrepreneurs.
So you think they're, I don't know. So I can only talk, you and I both have top MBAs, right? So I think it's fair to say that throughout all these top programs, and maybe all of them, I don't know, but nonetheless, I don't think they ever taught me or ingrained in me, and maybe it's changed because I'm open. When I graduate 2005, I don't know when you graduated, is
before then.
Yeah, it was. Well, I did a master's in between, another master's in between there, which sort of got me derailed. But and then I started a company. But I think that they taught my experience is they really wanted you to teach you how to be a manager. Now, whether that manager is considered a mini CEO of a P&L, that was for sure. They wanted you to be able to go into a big corporation. And I think that's really where they make their money, right? There's not a lot of MBAs programs out there that say, hey, come here and you're going to spit out an entrepreneur. I mean, they market that somewhat, but where they really make their money, because at the end of the day, it's the master's programs that these universities pretty much cash in, is they're like, hey, come here. You're going to be a super manager. We're going to teach you how to do this P&L program. And I only say that not because I didn't learn a lot and spending all the money I did, but mainly because I came out of there saying, okay, this was interesting. I definitely have a checkbox. I have a great network. I had a great experience. Did I learn more about spreadsheets? I don't know. I probably learned more about spreadsheets and marketing analysis at America Online and being a VC necessarily than I did in business school. But um, I did learn a bunch of core element things that I probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. Um, so that's what I offer you. Like, do you mean that when you say they taught us how to be a CEO, or do you think that's the new thing that now entrepreneurism is like the new hot thing that everybody wants to be?
I think it's a new hot thing, and maybe I've been speaking to more recent MBA grads than you or I, but they seem to be more interested in entrepreneurial activities and or getting to a point in their career where they're not just managers but running companies, whether they're small companies or big companies.
So what do you think
So
they're attracted to, though, Amr? Do you think they're so I want to, because this is an interesting, you and I have talked about it over the years. Like, are they interested because they think that you're going to make $1 billion and have a G5 or G6 now? Or is it, is it really that you create something that solves someone's problems that they're willing to pay you for, and you get to make money and solve a problem at the same time? Like, do you think they actually understand this thing?
so I think some of it comes with age. So I assume you're talking about, are you talking about MBA people, or are you talking about just
Well, there's
folks in
MBA
general
people that are
going?
coming out of the MBA program, right? Like, or anyone in general, but let's stay with the MBA program. They come out of the MBA. Is it because is it because they think that they're going to get on the front of Forbes, and is it the attention? Is it they just want to make money? Is it like, are they under some pretense that it's not what you and I know it is, which is what you just said when we started, which is you got to take out the trash. You just raised $9 million and you're taking out the trash, doing PowerPoints, hiring people, creating processes, probably up until late at night because you answer my text late at night. Like, do you think they actually understand that part of it?
No, I don't think they do. I think it's all glamour. So I think what they see is the Airbnb IPO. They see, Elon Musk. They have a vision of what an entrepreneur and by extension, a CEO is. The grind that, I mean, you know this well. You've started a couple companies. I mean, the grind that I've seen you go through. I've been with you on your VC meetings where you're trying to pitch your vision to a VC who doesn't get it because you don't fit their box, right? And you come out and you're like, you know what? That's fine. You brush it off and you go and do something else. You take a less experienced person, you put them in that position, and they'll be like, you know, shocked or whatever, right? So I think and that's why I said I think it comes with age. Like, I'm an advisor to several companies, but a couple of the ones that stand out, the entrepreneurs aren't it for the money. In one case, the guy already has money. He's cashed out his first company. But I am so impressed by how passionate he is about fixing a problem for an underserved population. That's all he preaches about. And the money will come, and it's come for him and his company. He's raised, a significant amount of capital. But whenever you talk to him, it's never about getting rich or being well known. He's not going after the Sandhill Road VCs. He's going after capital that shares his vision and that can solve the world problem that he's going after. That is what a real entrepreneur is, right? This passion, and they understand. And I think this is what comes with experiences. If you follow your passion and you fix the problem you're going to fix, the money will follow. You don't follow the money and then pick up a passion along the way. It doesn't work that way. It can, I guess, but that's not how it usually works. The best entrepreneurs I've found are so passionate. I'm talking to a couple, I'd say junior, I mean younger, first time entrepreneurs now, and they're raising seed money or have raised seed money, and I am just so impressed by how much research they've done into the problem they're trying to solve, in both these cases, by the way, I have decades of experience in this problem, but yet they came up with an angle to it and they managed to raise money for it. And they're young and they're building their teams and they're, seeing it go their way, because there's a luck plays a big part too, which we haven't talked about. But in one of these, the regulations are making it easier for this one company to do well. So, I love seeing that, right? And are they doing I mean, they get the grind because they are doing the grind. So they raise seed money, they're trying to figure out, should they work from home or have an office space? I've talked to one of them about, hey, what should I pay my first salesperson? I mean, that's not a simple question or answer or for them to think about, because they're not just going to hire one person, they've got to hire some other people too, so they've got to think through how that impacts their cap table, all that. So that's not taught at MBA schools, from what I know.
So let me say something about passion, because I do not know that I actually agree that. Here's what I've seen with people that I've helped, is that if you follow your passion around one problem, and it may be a problem, but it may not be a market for it, which is very different, right? You can have a problem. I mean, this from when I started that one company. Everybody wants to aggregate all your comms in one spot, but nobody will pay for it, right? Everybody wanted it for free. So here's a problem that's a huge problem, but there was no market. Now, if I was only passionate about that problem, then what happens is that I'm not willing to change direction to move the company into another level. And maybe I don't know, maybe age gives you some luxury of looking back, but I think at the end of the day, what I'm really passionate about is building things and solving problems. And I am not so tied to the actual problem as I am passionate about figuring stuff out and how to build a business. And I think that the entrepreneurs, whether they come out of business school or they're just out of the blue, that come into it and say, I'm really passionate that, I don't know, I want to make dog straightening hair because my dog has curly hair and it tangles, right? And then they find no market, and then they get discouraged, and then it's over. You see what I'm saying? What do you think about that?
So passion can be for different things. It can be for a particular idea. It can be for starting something from scratch. It can be for doing good, right? So I think along with passion, passion alone is not enough, right? You have to have good instincts. You have to have good instincts to know when the idea you're passionate about is not going to work. So you stop putting good money after bad, and then you find another idea you're passionate about. But passion is about building that thing that you're talking about. That thing may change. So going back to when we were both VCs, it's so trite, but what did we say then? We invest in people, not the idea, because the idea can change, right? And a good entrepreneur with good instincts, who's a visionary, will be able to adapt if the market throws them a curveball. But a person who's just passionate about that idea and that idea doesn't work, but doesn't have the instincts to change, will lose all the money, right, on the investment. So it goes back to having more than just passion.
But I think that there's this other thing. Maybe we don't have the right word for it, because I'm listening to you. I'm like, well, maybe I'm wrong, because the passion, if I look back, I don't know whether it's passion, Amer, or just stupidity or grit. Like, I hate that word grit. I think it's been overused, but you've got to have something that allows you to get through the no's. Like, how many no's did you have in raising your last round for this company?
20.
Oh, at least, right? Because you called me and you're like, everybody keeps telling me no. And I was like, yeah, that's the way it works, right? So, and I think Airbnb had something like 120 no's. So what do you call that? I don't know why that passion thing bothers me. I think you're right.
I think it's not the right word. Is it fire in the belly? Maybe it is it energy? Right? It's all those. It's grit is a good word for it, right? Because I mean, the best entrepreneurs just, they don't give up. Now they may give up on the idea. I know great entrepreneurs who thought up ideas and just found failed really quick and moved on, right? If they didn't have grit, they would just give up. They're like, oh, okay, I tried it, it didn't work. But they had whatever you want to call it, fire in the belly, passion, grit, and
But
they,
what is that, right? Like, do you think that
that's something you're born with, right? That you can't teach.
you don't think so?
No.
So
I
let me
think there's a
ask you.
lot of things you can teach, but you
Well,
can't teach
so
stuff
let me
like
ask
that.
you this, because this is semantics maybe, but so if I'm going to take myself because I don't want to speak for anybody, but if I look at myself, was I born with that? Here's what I was born with. I was born with dyslexia. So I struggled really hard. Even to this day, I memorize words. In fact, when I study for a test, I memorize the page and I know on the page where it is and I read it back to myself. And I taught myself that because I don't even know if it's the best way, candidly. It was really hard. But it's the way that I got through. Right. So that experience taught me that I just regularly never give up. And then it probably created this thing where I always want to be the best. And so it's that if I look back on, I try to analyze it, was I born with it or was it the experience? So I ask you, like, does someone just have to, because I've held this back, but I'm going to put it out there. Is it just street smarts? Like you just teach, street smarts go a long way. I mean, some of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met, I'm like, I don't even know if I can do that because they just have an experience where they had to use street smarts and you just can't teach that, right?
Right. I mean, by definition, you can't, right? That's versus book smarts. But again, I open this by saying it's both. You're born with some things, you learn some things, but at the end of the day, what you're born with trumps what you learn. Like if you don't have the things you're born with to be an entrepreneur, you're not gonna, generally speaking, be as successful. So let's say you're born with street smarts. That alone is not sufficient to create a successful company and become an entrepreneur, because you and I know there's many of the things you need to do. Like street smarts may not get me through a successful VC meeting. It may not attract the top salespeople to my company. It may not help me build a really highly engaged workforce. These are things you then learn, whether it's business school or you learn through a decade or two of working, right? A good entrepreneur doesn't succeed only because of the entrepreneur. A good entrepreneur knows who to hire, what smarter people to hire for different kinds of jobs that they're not good for. They've got the idea, they've got the grit, passion, whatever you want to call it, fire in the belly. They've got street smart, so they hustle. But at the end of the day, you still need to be able to listen, to communicate, to negotiate, to structure, right? All that is learned. So I see you're not convinced.
I don't know. I actually think that this whole thing is an interesting topic. So I called you up and said, hey, why don't you talk about it? Because
I think it is. It's something I've thought about too, right? Because you're in the valley and you see it happening. I mean, where it happens, where MBAs come, street smart people come, and both are successful in starting great companies.
that's what I mean. Like, and this wasn't meant to be, should you do an MBA or not? I mean, I mean, I think you can do like you've just said, I don't know what the data says because I haven't looked at, and I don't know anybody who's got the real data. I mean, all the business schools are going to do the data that says if you go to business school, you're going to make more money, right? But if you look at all the successful entrepreneurs, some of them dropped out, some of them didn't go to school. One of my mentors barely graduated from college, starts 2 companies, takes one public, and Warren Buffett buys it and takes it private, and he's on the board. Like, there's all these stories. I don't know that there's a path, but I find it interesting to say, as you were talking, I was like, well, what is it even, not Webster's dictionary, but what's the real definition of an entrepreneur, right? Somebody who comes up with an idea and takes the risk and makes it happen, and turns an idea into a problem. Yeah, I just don't know. What I do know is that I can teach the basics, right? Like, here's how to build a spreadsheet. Here's how you build a business plan. I can't teach that gut feeling thing that just comes from this other thing that we can't describe. So I just wonder, like, can you really teach the entrepreneur? And if I were to boil it down to one thing, Amer, it would be the one skill, beyond the fact that you got to solve a problem that somebody's willing to pay you for, is to keep going even when you don't believe you can keep going, if that makes sense.
Completely makes sense. So that has in a related, nothing to do with entrepreneurialism, but as you know from following me on Strava now, I've become an ardent erg rower. And
well, I'm excited for you for that, to get some exercise and eventually get yourself on a bike with us.
Bike.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is, and I'm following this program that's a 24-week program on week 9, and every week I'm finding new heights, and there's this very strong community that supported me and it helps. But like yesterday, I reached my highest heart rate ever on this, and I thought I was literally, if I did
What
2
was
more
it?
rows, I was 174.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
And I thought if I did 2 more rows pulls, I would pass out. But I didn't give up. Like, I had, maybe 200 meters left to go, and I did it. And that was my highest rate. So there's many times I've thought of giving up during a row, but I've just, maybe slowed my pace down a little, but finished it. And that to me is a win. But I think you're right. Going back to entrepreneurial skills and what you are born with versus what you learn, that persistence that you're talking about is critical, right? And I would lump that together. Well, not lump it together. It's very different from street smarts, but I kind of tend to think of them going hand in hand. Like, someone who's street smart is also persistent. I don't know why. Maybe that's just the kind of people I've run into. But I think that is very true, that you have to have that, and because you will hear the easiest thing, when you're a VC, is to tell someone no, because it's easy to say, because you as a VC might be lazy and don't want to do the work to really figure out, is this a good opportunity?
Well, VCs never tell you no, Amer.
Right. They'll be like,
ghost
hey,
you.
keep in touch. Yeah.
Ghost you, right? So just in case your company takes off and they want to do the next round.
Right. We could both write a book on that. But I think, so going back to what an entrepreneur hears, they hear a lot of no's, right? Whether it's from like Elon Musk in the early days, right? I know this from folks who worked for him, heard a lot of no's from suppliers who like, why would I sell you aluminum when Ford, who's building 1 million F-150s, I can sell them all my aluminum, right? So, when you're trying to build a supply chain, when you're a startup, when you're trying to secure funding, when you're a startup, when you're trying to just attract people to your company, when you're a startup, you're going to hear a lot of no's.
Even your friends, right? They project on you regularly. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah. Are you sure you want to do that? Right.
I don't know. I think they're talking about themselves most of the time. But
I think that's right. So that persistence, grit, whatever is key. I agree.
The one thing that you're talking about, the erg, which is really, I was looking at my Strava here on my phone, which I shouldn't be while I'm talking to you, but I think one thing that could be learned, and that I have been able to teach people, and that you're learning, that you just explained, is a really important thing. And of all people who do it is the military does it actually quite well, is you have different levels of pain that your brain innately will try to stop you, right? Your heart rate went to 176 and your brain said, Amer, do not go any further, because it's always in preservation mode.
Yeah.
And had you not pushed through to what I call in my bike riding and anything that I do, discover this next level, is if you had not done that, you actually probably take 2 steps backwards because you get scared, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really the courage to go past things. It's not about not being scared, because I know what you're talking about. I saw my monitor one time go to 205. This is years ago when I was racing. And I was like, I am probably going to die here any minute.
Yep.
But I was like, I am not going to lose this wheel. I'm going to keep going. And what I discovered is that you can recover and you're not going to die. And I probably learned to go through 3 phases. The military, in many cases, basically brings people to the brink of death so that they can feel that, hey, the first wave of no is not true. Second wave isn't. Third wave, start to get concerned. Fourth, you probably die, right? So I think that I could teach that. You're learning that, however, you're learning it on your own.
Well, I'm learning it through a community as well, like of teachers, right, who have done it, who've been to that brink and said, keep pushing, right?
Yeah, right.
You're teaching me right now. Like you just told me that you've done 205. So now I'm going to test how much higher I can go.
No. So let me be very clear. I haven't seen 205. The last time I saw 205 was on it was called the Terrible 2. It was 125 miles up in Napa. It was 125 degrees. And I probably was potentially having a heart attack. I don't know, because it was so hot. But that was like 4 years ago. My heart rate, just for everyone listening here, and you too, Amer, is individual. So everybody has their different thresholds. You got to, test it. I'm not suggesting to push it. I just don't want anybody listening to this, Amer, and be like, oh, well, you can do 205. I've only gotten to 150. Like my wife is like a vet's 160-ish. Everybody has their individual stuff. But what I am suggesting is also that as you become more fit, your heart gets better. Just like as an entrepreneur, you get more experience, you realize that you can go past, there's another level. So I think part of it is I could teach that, right? One thing that I don't know about, I think you and I have talked about it, is it's like, just keep going, right? See what happens tomorrow.
That's right.
See what happens tomorrow. See what happens if you keep going that extra 200 meters. Do you pass out? If you pass out, then you realize that probably whatever 176 is your max. But if you don't,
you'll never know. Yeah. I mean, that's right. And I think that's really important for entrepreneurs, because it's not, I mean, this is a long game, right? Like by the time you start something to where you've actually built enough scale where you're seeing the fruits of it, whether they're financial fruits or just feeling good about the goal you set, it's not a 1 to 2 year thing. So
what do you mean? I thought you just got an idea and you just whipped it up and you got rich.
Yeah, and maybe that's what MBAs are learning in school. That's dangerous. And maybe they need to hear about a lot of these failures that happen, right? So, because you read about the successes, but you don't read about the 1,001 failures that people go through, where they mortgage their houses and they take a bet and it doesn't work out, and then they go to a corporate job and disillusioned, and you need to hear all of that. But it is in that, let's say, in your first year, you'll hear more no's than you probably heard in your entire life. And if you don't keep pushing through, you're always going to fail if you don't try, right? We know that. So that's why I meant earlier when I said reluctant entrepreneurs. There's a lot of people who start companies or are thinking of starting companies who are talking themselves out of it. Like, hey, I really want to do this, but I don't know if the market's big enough, or I don't know if I'll get funded. So they're failed before they've even started because they're just full of negativity. And then there's those with grit and fire in the belly and street smarts are like, yeah, I'm just going to give it a shot, right? I'm going to try this for a couple of years, see if this works. And just even a couple of years is great because you'll learn so much in that couple of years. And of course, luck plays a big role. And sometime in those 2 years,
Do you
hopefully
think
luck goes your way.
do you think luck plays a big role? I
Yeah.
think you can. I think if you stay with it long enough, you get to a crossroads where luck happens because you continued. But that,
So what is luck, Brandon? So
I don't know.
well, so let me throw something at you. So some people would say luck is something that is outside your control that happens, right? Someone else does something, or for some companies like healthcare companies that were on the verge of dying, COVID was luck. Good luck for them, for because it boosted their businesses. Um, but other people would say luck is nothing more than good decisions versus bad decisions. You make your luck. So there's no such thing as good luck. It's a good decision that you made that got you on that path. And if you had made a bad decision, you would attribute that to bad luck. So how much of luck is in your control?
I don't know. I think it's
It's a philosophical
semantic, right? Like this whole world, luck is something. I don't know. It's probably a whole
I mean,
philosophical
it is
discipline.
philosophical because you could say that, some young entrepreneurs start a company and it's going nowhere, and then there's some structural change in the industry, or a pandemic or something that basically turned that industry around, and now your company is favored because of that.
I think I don't.
Uh,
I tend to not like the word luck because I think it can get you off the hook for either being successful or not. Right? Like, oh, that didn't work out, Amer. I
yeah,
just wasn't lucky. Well,
yeah, yeah.
nah, I don't know. Did you try hard enough?
Yeah, well, that's why I getting to, right? Is it really luck, or is it a series of good or bad decisions that you make that determine?
And healthcare companies, what were they lucky, or were they there when an event that benefited them just happened because they stuck it out and stayed there?
Yeah,
I don't know. You can call it whatever you want, right? But call it making a lot of money. At some point, the yeah,
well,
but I
you
think you
say,
got to keep going.
you said making a lot of money a couple times. Do you think all entrepreneurs are in it for
Well,
that?
I here's what I will say is probably subconscious because when you were talking about passion, and I was listening to two students that I have, and they were reading on their Instagram the negative feedback they've gotten, right? And some of the negative feedback, they sold their house, they're traveling around the world, or the United States in an RV, and they're they're blogging about it is the best way to say it. And they are trying to make money. Of course they
Mhm.
are. They're trying to build a media company. And some of these comments were like, "Oh, well, you guys are just trying to make money." And I was listening to this last night, and one of the things I think that bothers me is what in God's name is wrong with making a lot of money? Like, there's this whole movement out there that says, well, all these people are getting rich. Okay, so what? Good for them. I'm excited about that. Like, there seems to be, Amr, this belief that it's almost like we're committing a sin. I'm not even talking about one religion because I'm not one religion guy, but like, oh my God, Amr, you made money. You're a sinner. No, you made money. Like, it's totally okay. And if you want to go make a lot of money, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Um, I think it's a great reason to become an entrepreneur, that you want to make money to either keep score or own your own time. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
But
I agree.
that, let me finish. I'll let you comment. That solely building on something you said earlier may not be enough to get you through the 5,000 no's, the 2 a.m.s, the, I don't know, whatever, missing your kid's soccer game might not get you through that.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you on the second part. Actually, on the first part too, there's nothing wrong with it. What I will say though is it depends what a lot of money is, right? It will depend for different people. Like some people will think $1 million is a lot of money. Some people will say 10 million is a lot of money. Others will say 100 million. And I know people who've made everything along that scale and even more. I know them personally who aren't entrepreneurs. They're corporate people. You can make that money on a risk adjusted basis easier in a uh, venture capital, corporate finance, legal, even a corporate job. If you're like the number 2 person in a company, or you're doing so making money itself isn't, I think, the main drive, or shouldn't be the main drive for entrepreneurs. Maybe it is. Maybe for younger people. Actually, I don't know. I don't think age has to do with it. But that passion, right? You didn't like that word, but in some cases, the passion for a particular cause or a mission that leads you to start a company. And in the process, you'll make a lot of money. You had said, we were talking earlier about the reason, I think, I forget what the actual point was, what reason people start a company. Is it, because they see a problem? I think it's to, one of the characteristics is not only do you see a problem, but you want to challenge the status quo, right? Because you can fix a problem using everyday approaches. But if you're saying that the giants and the behemoths and the companies that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, they're doing it all wrong, and they've created a bad experience and a bad thing, and I want to change that, right? So you're solving a problem, but you're challenging them. That takes some major cojones, as well as grit and passion and everything. And because you're solving a big problem in a very big space, there's a lot of money at stake, which you could potentially make, right? But again, I think the data, I haven't seen the latest data, but the odds are against any one entrepreneur, because very few succeed.
Here's an interesting thing. This is actually this recording will come out today on Wednesday. On Monday, I pulled all the research, Amer, because I was getting tired of hearing, the stat 50% of companies fail in the first year. So I was like, so the other Sunday, I don't know what I was doing. I'm recovering from a bike ride. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to chase down this and see where all this comes from. Like, where are the studies? Where's the real data? So I started pulling the string, and I read one article and I look in the Cliff Notes where they reference, and I go to that article. That article references another article. It's like nobody ever. So I went to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and I pulled the data. And actually, the odds aren't that bad, Amer. In 10 years, like 23% of the companies still exist. At 5, it's about 53%. And what I don't know in that data, which it didn't reveal, which some of those companies may have had exited, some of them may merge, some of them went out of business, but the data is not complete. Are the odds against you? They absolutely are against you. Can you mitigate that risk? Yes. So I think as it relates to that, I have a different perspective, mainly because I saw that data and I was like,
yeah, I think, and frankly, the stuff that you do, I've been following your podcasts on, how to write business plans, how to pitch. That's what is needed as well to mitigate some of those risks, right? So the training that you provide is a great service.
I'll pay you. I'll take you out to dinner for that. Thanks. But that is it.
That's stuff that you're not born with, that you can train and learn, right? And you need to learn all these things to be able to succeed.
I think the other thing that you touched on, which is really important, which is interesting about and I saw, when I saw you like one of my bike rides recently, I was like, did Amer just sign up? But you actually been on Strava for a while. You just hadn't logged any.
I wasn't doing any exercise. That's like, I play a lot of squash, but Strava doesn't recognize squash.
Well, you can log that. with the manual thing, but not really. It's not one of those things. And I know you do play a lot of squash, but I think the other thing that's really that you mentioned, which you can teach or give, is a support group, right? Like, this, if you're going to be motivated to stay on that program because people like me who follow you and like your stuff, if you don't show up, it shows up. Like what happened to Amer? He hadn't done the erg in 3 weeks. Like, hey, shoot you a text, right? Or it's also that dopamine. Like, I want all those likes. I got like 42 likes on my rod the other day. I mean, so having that support group, would you agree, around you, and just whether that's, I mean, you've been on the board of my company, having accountability, whether that's just informal, formal, I think actually paying someone in many ways makes you accountable because you're invested in using the resource that you invested in, or even board members, right? You give board members equity and you're paying them to, in many ways, be accountable. So I think that accountability network, I don't know, like you and I, call each other up. When you used to do dinner on Thursday night before COVID and your kids got big, that was support group, right? In many ways, but would you agree with that?
I absolutely. Like, I guess I would flip it around. Like, why would you not want a support group? Why would you not want advisors or a board or your friends to pump you up? I mean, why, or tell you that this is stupid for these reasons? Like, why would you think you can do anything on your own without
I don't know.
help?
Some people don't, I don't know. Some people don't feel comfortable enough, I guess. I mean, it's not easy all the time, right? Hey, Amer, how am I doing running the company? Well, Brandon, you really suck because your quarter sucked. You're not getting traction and you're clearly not doing things right. Like that can be a hard pill to swallow, right?
Yeah, but then, there's ways of giving feedback without saying, Brandon, you suck.
Yeah,
Right?
but come on, man. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, right? But
Yeah.
but it's the criticism of anything that can be hard. And if you haven't heard no 100 times, if you haven't gotten feedback 100 times and you're a new entrepreneur and all of a sudden someone's telling you, and you're already on the edge, like your whole reluctant entrepreneur, these reluctant entrepreneurs, which I think is an interesting way of putting it, they're on the edge. Like one thing, like, oh man, I don't know how good you look today. Like they shut down, right?
Yeah. No, that's true. Um, so whether it's investors or a board or friends, like, I guess it's personal for everyone. But if I look at around me and just the people I've spoken in the last 18 months who've either asked for guidance or money or just people I've met, I'd say, just doing rough math in my head, the majority of them surround themselves with a support structure and benefit from it. So, and remember I said one of the things, so there's a lot that you're born with, but there's stuff that you can be trained on, right? Like knowing how to listen, knowing how to take feedback, knowing how to motivate people. These are all things that you can train on. And 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 hearing all that from us, even hearing the tough news from your board or advisors, makes you stronger. If you have enough grit, and if you're so convinced that this is going to work, you might just say, hey, thanks, Amer, for that brutal feedback, but you know what, I'm just going to do it my way because I believe in what I'm doing. And so I guess I don't know what my point is other than to say that you'd be stupid to not surround yourself with a good support structure.
Yeah, I think you do. I just did my 360 with all the people. I should have had Gia send it to you. But the way that I do it is really simple. I just ask people to describe me in 4 words and what I do well and what I don't, and make it really easy. But you can glean a lot from that. And if you start to exercise, no pun intended, and do that, then you get used to the feedback, right? And we're all human, so it's sort of chink in your in your ego, but you get used to hearing things, then it makes it easier.
Yep.
What?
That's a good thing to do. 360s. I like that.
Yeah, and make it super easy. Actually, Gia built it in Google Sheets in like 10 minutes and sent it out to everybody on the team and said it'll be anonymous and feedback. And I think I've tried to. No, I haven't tried. I really have implemented a few of the things. Quite candidly, I said what you said, which was like, "Hey, just who I am."
Yeah.
Like, to change that core thing would just fundamentally throw the whole.
Yeah.
I don't want to call magic, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's good to know that that's what people see in you, right? So you can then manage to that when you work with them. So it's all helpful. I think it takes it it it, it takes a lot to want feedback on yourself that's anonymous, because some of it's going to be brutal, and not everybody, to your point, likes to hear the truth.
Well, I think wrapping up here a little bit on the reluctant entrepreneur and can you teach entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur, or is it innate? Is God, I had a really good point that I was just about to throw down, and is oh my God, does that mean I'm getting old, or I'm just running too fast in my brain? I don't know.
I'll come back to you if it was a really good point.
Well, I hope so. What was I gonna say? What were we talking about?
Um,
You don't remember
Maybe I'm
either? What are
getting
you
old.
daydreaming? It's 5 minutes of lunch and you haven't gotten there.
You're just gonna summarize, right? In like key to
Well, the
becoming a good
reluctant, I
entrepreneur,
think,
things you can learn, things you can't.
yeah, I think the whole reluctant entrepreneur. Here was the point is I think reluctant entrepreneurs or people who are considering it or even think they have a good idea, I think they talk to themselves too much. I'm guilty of this completely. And you know who really taught this, or at least made it popular? It's not a new concept, which was Steve Blank, who's sort of an older entrepreneur here, obviously in the Valley now, but still he's still prevalent, teaches, and his things he teaches are really good. Which is, if you think you have an idea that's so good, stop talking to yourself and go, oh, this was about tying it to the feedback. Stop talking to yourself. Just go out and call 20 prospective customers and get their answer. But this goes back to what I was saying when you're like, oh, why wouldn't somebody want to have a mentor program? Because they don't want, it's very hard to take that feedback, right? And I will give somebody a piece of advice around this. Another thing that you and I think in a lot of those dinners have always been at least honest with one another. We're like, hey, if we knew everything, we'd already, we'd be richer than we already are. We'd have everything, and we'd all our bets would always work. But just because someone gives you that opinion doesn't mean that they're right, right? Like even the best investor in all places in Silicon Valley still gets about 7 or 6 of them wrong. Is that fair?
That's very true. Data supports that, I think.
So, like, if you're out there listening and you have an idea, go call people. Steve Blank's course, I don't know if you've ever saw that, Amer. He makes you call 100 potential customers in the first week, or you basically out of the class. So, like, just stop talking to yourself and go make it happen. So
that's very good advice, and I think it's not just for getting customer feedback, but what I was alluding to earlier, that there's a lot of these reluctant entrepreneurs basically talk themselves out of it before they even started, because they're talking to themselves about all the risks and will this work? Will customers really want this? And to your point, how are you going to answer that if you haven't spoken to 100 of them, right? You're just hypothesizing, So yeah, go knock on doors, figure it out.
Yeah, like I think it's good to start with a problem that you have and solve it, but then go talk to 100 people. Or, I tell people just call like 20 that you don't know, not your mom. Your mom's always going to tell you got a good idea and want you to be successful. So Amer, finishing up, what would be 3 HPTs that you would give entrepreneurs out there who are reluctant? They believe they have a good idea, but they're talking themselves out of it. 3 HPTs, high percentage tips.
I'm glad you told me what that TLA was, because I wasn't familiar with HPT.
Yeah, that's from my fishing days. HPT, high percentage tip.
So 3 HPTs that people who are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur would be to have a thick skin, going back to all the no's that you're going to get. Surround yourself with whatever you would call it, smart people, capable people who've done it, people who've failed, right? Get feedback from others, and including, by the way, prospects, customers. Go do your research would be one. And so, what was the first one? Get a thick skin, be persistent, surround yourself with people. And then, what's the third one? I guess it would be sign up for Brandon White's
No, you
Success
can't
Secrets
do that.
podcast.
You can't say that. That's not it. You can't do that, but you got to come up with a real one here.
No, so my other real one is, and so this is again, I think a conversation for a different day. But you've been reading about the flight from Silicon Valley, right, and new hubs like Miami and newly energized hubs like Austin, and people going to Texas and stuff. I am one of those maybe fewer people now in the Valley than before that think that the Valley is still the ultimate place for entrepreneurs to be, because I mean, I'm generalizing again, but there's areas you can be a very successful entrepreneur in Florida or New York, but it just feels to me that your chances for success and learning are greater in the ecosystem that we have here, right? Because there's people like you, there's people like me, there's people like Elon Musk, there's investors, there's Sand Hill Road, there's angel investors, there's courses, there's alums from Airbnb, from eBay, from Uber, whoever, who want to do the next big thing. So that's the other thing, like make sure you're in an ecosystem that is supportive of what you're doing. And I mean that from all angles, from funding to training to skipping some of the learning along the way or accelerating your path to the next milestone. I think people underestimate that. And that's what I think makes Silicon Valley so special.
Well, let's do another episode if I can grab you for an hour next week on this, because I actually agree with you. And I'm not saying that there won't be another area, but I did have an experience on the other coast with a region that still hasn't gotten there, but mainly because this ecosystem here in Silicon Valley took 100 years to build. And you and I know a lot of that history, and we can talk about it. And interesting enough, I'm glad I pushed you to the real third HPT, because I actually read a scientific study yesterday that studied this and said that they have found that the most successful entrepreneurs, as rated by length of company and money made, have been in quote unquote ecosystems that have allowed them to learn from their peers, from the environment, from the just news, right? Our news that we get here in this region, and it's really not Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley seems to really go from Mill Valley now all the way to past San Jose, right, to Morgan Hill, and even Santa Cruz and Half Moon Bay and all these places now. But there is something to be said, and it's actually one of a few reasons why I moved here. candidly, I think it's the same. You and I have talked about this, right? You moved
That's why I
back here,
moved here too. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So let's save that conversation. Thanks for taking time out of your day to make this happen. I'm very much looking forward to when we can go back to our Thursday night dinners at your house.
Me too. So hopefully starting summer, if not
Yeah,
a little
cool.
before.
Thanks a lot, man.
Awesome. All right. Take care, Brandon.